taken into consideration that it had a deep impact on on what the Russian people were thinking, and they believed that this was a good thing. There was a lot of people worried. There were people concerned that Trump couldn't be trusted, that the U.S. government couldn't be trusted, and they were wondering why Putin was going there. Knowing that the president was saying you have to accept a ceasefire that Putin would never accept. It was like, are you setting yourself up for failure? But the one thing I said while I was there over and over again is that Vladimir Putin is as steady as anything in the world. And he has already made his position very clear. And he will make this position very clear to Donald Trump. And I'm confident that Donald Trump, once he's exposed to the Russian reality and not the garbage he's getting from everybody around him, that Donald Trump will do the right thing if his true objective is peace. Sure enough, a short car ride with Donald Trump and the beast, and suddenly Donald Trump did a 180-degree flop. He said, no more ceasefire. Remember, if Putin didn't accept the ceasefire from the start, he was going to sanction him. Ugh. And suddenly Trump comes out and goes, right. Yeah, no ceasefire. Well,
listen, on the flight from Anchorage, from D.C. to Anchorage, on Air Force One, 2 hours before he met President Putin, he told Fox News, I'll be very disappointed if there's no ceasefire and there will be consequences.
Yeah.
I suspect it was the bonding in the beast plus that hour-long lecture that President Putin gave in the presence of the president, Marco Rubio, and Steve Witkoff, and Sergei Lavrov. I'm going to guess the neocons around the president had never even told him the Russian understanding of the genesis and causes of the special military operation, and it resonated with him.
And the truth about the war. The president was told the Russians were losing, that the Russians were taking horrific casualties. And I think Putin just set him straight. We're killing 20 Ukrainians for every Russian dead. Russia's lost a lot of dead, but we're killing. And now we know the truth. They 1.7 million dead Ukrainian soldiers. That's from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. And Putin set him straight on so many things. Witkoff, when Witkoff left and sat down, and he was ashen-faced. He had to leave the debriefing. Marco Rubio couldn't speak because Putin basically took control and basically said, everybody who's advising you is lying to you. Everybody is lying to you. Here's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And he brought that. Trump, Putin has a way of doing this. It's his thing. You remember with Tucker Carlson when Putin gave him the history lesson?
It was 45 minutes long, and it was textbook. It was practically with footnotes. It was so well articulated.
Right, but he also he said, I went to the archives and I pulled out the original documents, and here's copies of them. Museum quality copies that he gave to Tucker saying, when I speak, I'm just not making stuff up. This is the history. These are the documents. When he met with the president, he gave him a presidential daily briefing, the CIA's equivalent, with the documents, with the facts, could not be refuted. This is why the president did the flop, because he was presented with the real information. And
so Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and John Ratcliffe, the head of the CIA, all of whom were with the president in Alaska, should have been humiliated for the lousy job of preparing him and for feeding him with data and information demonstrably false.
I agree. I agree 100%. But we see the reflection now in what Trump is doing. First of all, the 180-degree flop. Trump made a bold commitment, as you said, on the airplane. If Putin doesn't immediately yield to my demand for a ceasefire, there will be consequences. This will not be pretty. And suddenly he's saying, yeah, no ceasefire. We're going, long-term conflict resolution, root causes, the whole thing. And I think you're going to see as this goes forward, look at Trump, the way he handled the Magnificent Seven that showed up in the White House, dismissive, because he now knows the Russian truth. He knows the Russian reality. And it doesn't.
Right, well, I have to ask you about the Magnificent Seven. It is clear from whatever he said to them, perhaps privately, because Chancellor Scholz said this back in Germany, and President Macron said it that evening on NBC News, that the United States would participate militarily in a security guarantee. So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, what is a security guarantee? And secondly, I can't imagine any circumstances under which the Russians would agree to EU, UK, US troops anywhere in post-war Ukraine, whether on the ground or in the air?
Lavrov just said that. I mean, you've met Lavrov. You know
Yeah.
he's a serious man. Lavrov just said, no, this is not going to happen. No European presence at all. No security guarantees the way they're talking about. Russia is the security guarantee. He said, if you want to do all that, Russia gets a veto over it. Because the Russians are putting the mark down. Ukraine belongs to us. Ukraine
so
is part of it.
Why would Trump have, unless he's just wanting to, he sometimes listens to whoever speaks in his ear last. Sometimes, unfortunately, that's Lindsey Graham. Sometimes he's the opposite to that. Sometimes he tells the audience what he thinks they want to hear. Why would he even have said what Macron said and Merz said he said?
Because first of all, I think Macron and Merz are guilty of wishful thinking. First of all, Trump goes into verbal diarrhea. I apologize, but that's just the way he does. He starts talking about something. You have to listen to what he says very carefully. He says, security guarantees. We think it's a good idea. Then he said about the Europeans, they want to do this, but I don't know if it's going to happen. That's the reality. Trump didn't commit to anything. I can guarantee you 100%. Trump did not commit to putting U.S. air power over Ukraine, and I can guarantee 100% he did not commit to putting U.S. boots on the ground. What he told the Europeans is, this is your responsibility. You have to do it. We'll be sort of there in the background monitoring this, but no, Trump did not commit American military power to Europe. This is wishful thinking on the part of the Europeans who heard what they wanted to hear and eliminated the parts of Trump's response, such as the one that I just said, that make it clear that he didn't agree to this.
All right. Sergei Lavrov has made a number of newsworthy statements in the past 4 days. I mean, the first newsworthy statement he made was his sartorial choice when he arrived in Alaska wearing a CCCP sweatshirt. That was enough to get the attention of the international press in a brilliant way. We'll put that aside because you and I both love that kind of snarkiness. Here is Foreign Minister Lavrov. Chris, I'm not sure when this was, but I know it was very recently. It was either yesterday or this morning. No strategic guarantees. Cut number 18.
Following the summit of Russia and the United States in Alaska, where we have achieved significant progress in moving towards defining the future shape and parameters for conflict settlement. And following this event, the European countries, together with Mr. Zelensky, went to Washington, and there they tried to promote their own agenda, which is aimed at making sure that the security guarantees follow the logic of isolating Russia, the logic of uniting the Western world and Ukraine in order to continue the aggressive confrontational policy of holding Russia back, and in mind of the goal of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia. We completely reject such proposals and initiatives. Besides, the Ukrainian regime and its representatives are making quite specific comments on the current situation, directly showcasing that they are not interested in a sustainable long-term and fair conflict settlement.
There you have it.
Look, the Russians said to Trump, if you can open the door for peace on our terms, we're willing to walk through it. But the Russians haven't even put their shoes on because they know that Zelensky and Europe won't play ball. Zelensky's already undermined himself. I mean, one of the key Russian demands is that whatever post-conflict Ukraine looks like, they need to respect the rights of the Russian people who live in Ukraine. That means that Russians have to be able to speak their language, practice their religion, the Orthodox faith, which is being violently suppressed by the Ukrainians today, and that their history and culture has to be respected. Russian literature has to be allowed in the libraries. The Ukrainians have to stop going in and toppling Russian monuments. And yet Zelensky today just straight up said they will not allow Russians to speak Russian. In game, set, match. It's over. That Zelensky just committed political suicide.